Welcome to the StrongTeams.com podcast, where we help leaders build strong teams. Teams built on empathy, understanding, and trust, where every team member feels valued and contributes at the highest level possible.
Welcome to the StrongTeams.com podcast. My name is Steve Neesmith.
And I'm Rodney Cox.
And Rodney, I'm particularly excited about today's guest. His name is Shawn Lemon. And in 2013, Shawn founded The Digital Organizer. The Digital Organizer partners with businesses to create streamlined, effective, and easy-to-use digital organization systems. It's their mission to empower people with the tools they need to supercharge their productivity so they can get more of the right things done. I love that. Shawn has a unique ability to take complex technical concepts and make them understandable to anyone, including us, Rodney. He's so good at it that he makes his living as the digital organizer. Shawn, thank you for joining us today on the StrongTeams.com podcast.
Man, thanks for having me. I'm excited to hang out with you guys today.
Yeah, Shawn, and let me add my welcome. I'm grateful that you're here, and I can't wait for our listeners to hear what you have, all your nuggets of wisdom of how we can digitally get organized. And for those of you that are listening that don't even know how to spell the word digital, once again, Steve said that he can teach anyone. So a few of us that are listening today might get tested on that promise. But Shawn, if you could tell us a little bit more about your personal background before we get into your professional background for our listeners, I think that would be helpful and encouraging.
Yeah, absolutely. So I live in Franklin, Tennessee with my wife, Madeline, and our little boy, Nico. He's a year old. So we've got our hands full right now with the little guy running around. But I grew up in Las Vegas. My dad worked in the casino industry and my mom had a balloon business. So I grew up in a house with a small business and a dad who always encouraged us to ask why this, why that. You know, we'd be at the sub shop, you know, frustrated of why it took so long to get a sandwich. And they're like, well, why is this happening? What would you do differently? And, you know, we're sitting there as little kids trying to figure out what we would do to make the operation more efficient. You know, my dad made us read the manual before we got a new radio, you know, a tape deck, CD, you know, combo and everything. So I had to read the manual before actually getting in and playing with my new radio, which was kind of amazing. It was more of a gift than just the radio player in and of itself, because it made sure that I understood how it all worked. And I knew how to use a radio better than anyone else. Or my friend wanted to make a mixtape, I could show him. So that's the type of environment I grew up in. And so when I got my first Mac, my friends heard and they started asking me about their Macs and how to do this and that. I'm like, I don't know. So I just opened up the manual and started reading, and then would teach people how to do it, write long emails and little lists of how to do stuff. And it's just the way I think is how do we do this more efficiently? How does it work? And, but all of that is really so that I can go outside and do other things, go outside and play. I love extreme sports. I love playing with my kid and biking and all that stuff. And so it's always a balance of, you know, doing the computer stuff to be able to go outside and do fun stuff out there. So I feel like I've got a pretty good balance of those two things.
So give me an example of an extreme sport. Like you said, I like extreme sports. So give me one example.
Well, a few years ago, a little more than a few years ago, I got into downhill skateboarding. So going really fast on skateboards. The fastest I ever got was 55 miles an hour going down the road. They're really expensive skateboards that are really stable, but you also have to have a lot of technique and be strong at it. And it was pretty crazy. I ended up fracturing my shoulder. I fractured my wrists. So I don't do that much anymore, but I've always been an adrenaline junkie. I raced BMX. I love skiing, rollerblading. I love motorcycles and, all kinds of stuff like that.
Yeah, that's cool. I'm not an extreme guy at all. Like I'm on the opposite end of the spectrum. I love adventure. I
Yeah.
love to ski and bike, mountain bike, all those things, right? My daughter says when dad says, watch this, you probably ought to get your video camera out, right? Because it's probably not going to turn out real good. That's my extreme. But love mountain biking, love the adventure of outdoor, but not much into extreme. I'm pretty reserved. So, but I love to watch guys like you, right?
Yeah.
I've seen that downhill skateboarding before, like where they stop by sliding the board sideways, almost like you're downhill, what do they call that? Snowboarding
Right.
or whatever. I'm
Right.
going like, that is nuts, man.
It is. It really is nuts.
It is. Yeah, I'm glad that you're admitting that to our audience,
Yeah.
because if you didn't say it wasn't nuts, that you would lose your credibility instantly.
Yeah.
Right?
No,
And so,
I hear people, your friends hear that I do, and like, oh my gosh, I would love to do that. I've been thinking about doing it, and I'm just like, maybe don't. It's fun, but if you do, come to me. You got to get the right gear.
Well, Shawn, I want you to feel at home today, so we're gonna consider this extreme podcasting today. All right.
Fantastic.
So maybe before the end of it, we'll do something, I don't know, extreme that just surprises our listeners. So just buckle up.
buckle up. That's
right.
what I say. Okay, so your professional journey. Steve told us in the intro that you actually make a living helping people get digitally organized.
That's right.
So talk a little bit about your personal journey. I mean, your professional journey, how you got here, how you got involved in the digital organizer.
Yeah, so I ended up making my way to Franklin, Tennessee, and got a job at the Apple Store. Just because I loved the stuff, I was telling you I got a Mac and I dug into the manuals and everything, and I just loved it. And so I was on the sales floor selling stuff, but then I'd spend a lot of time with people showing them how to use what they were doing. And turned out they actually had a role in the store called the creative at the time. And you could buy a membership at the Apple Store only when you bought your first Mac, or not first Mac, but when you bought a new Mac, you could buy this one-to-one membership. And you could get training. And so they saw me already doing it, but not in appointments, and said, hey, why don't you do this and kind of fill in for some of those spots? And then they needed someone who could do video editing. And that's what I had just come out of, was video editing, not with Final Cut Pro, but they said, you need to certify in this. And if you can certify, the next seat is yours. And so I did it. And I spent nearly 7 years at the Apple Store in retail, one-to-one, teaching people how to use their Apple products. And I absolutely loved it. But I kept seeing these people come in and they'd transfer all their stuff onto a new Mac. And there was a big mess. They bought this because they wanted to make photo books. They wanted to organize their photos and create slideshows, or start making music, or whatever it was, write a book. But everything that got transferred in created such a mess that a lot of people couldn't move past that mess and get to what they wanted to actually do, because they couldn't figure it out. That just jumble of everything was in the way, and they couldn't see clearly and couldn't just bull right through and get it done. It just, they're organized people that it didn't work digitally for them. And so after a while, I was trying to fix these messes, but Apple doesn't make it so you can fix messes in the store, even in the training program or the Genius Bar. They're there to fix if there's something's wrong, or teach you how to use the software. But what about teaching you how you should do it and getting everything back under control? So I started the Digital Organizer in 2013 to kind of fill that gap, because the consultants out there, most tech consultants, all they want to do is set you up with an app, set up the new computer and say, go. How to organize, how you should actually organize your stuff, how you should communicate, which parts of this app should you use and which should you just forget about. Nobody was doing that. And so few people are now. And so that's what we're doing, is filling that gap and trying to help people get control of what they're doing, teach them a framework of how to think about organization digitally, and what to focus on so that you can focus. because that's the biggest asset we're missing out on right now, or really being robbed of, is our attention. Everything's being designed to capture your attention right now. And that's what we need to get stuff done, right?
Yeah, and you can get off on the wrong track real fast, right?
Oh, yeah.
Especially in the digital space. So I love that idea of focused on the right things. And I'm sure our listeners out there are wondering, it sounds like you have a process, a method for organization. How do your methods or your processes help the leaders that are listening actually manage and build strong teams? Why is digital organization so critical in the professional ministry setting?
So it's all about stewardship. So we want to steward people's time. In ministry, you've got people that you're hiring, and you got a lot of volunteers as well. And the number one thing that we're trying to battle, well, that a lot of people are trying to battle, is burnout. Especially in a volunteer environment, the more friction that's there, the easier it is to burn out. And when everyone is going willy-nilly and assigning tasks to other people, delegating to everyone else without a real framework and without visibility into what's being done, who's already on it, what the priorities are, then it creates a lot of chaos. And it's hard to constantly live in that environment of reacting. Now, in ministry, you're already reacting, right? With all of these people, they're coming to you with needs because they need you for one reason or another. And you need your volunteers, you need your staff. And so everyone's kind of needing each other. And so the more that we can steward each other's time and their resources, the further we can go, the easier it is, and the more attractive an environment it creates. So, that's a good bit. We can go into other areas from there, but stewarding people's time is a big deal.
I agree. I wholeheartedly agree. And Shawn, a little bit of background on myself. A lot of my career has been in corporate, but I've done a portion of my career in ministry leadership, and I can tell you that it was very frustrating to come into a very established large ministry organization and find out, for example, this is just one of many examples, find out that nobody had been stewarding passwords for all the applications that they used in the business of ministry. And it literally took me and my team weeks, and ultimately in some cases months, to track down passwords and logins for all the various tools that were used. That type of organization would have been so valuable in the onboarding of myself, my team members. And so one of the things that I did immediately was, create a centralized repository for that and make that a part of onboarding for all new employees, that they knew where to find that type of information. And that's just one anecdote, but it's also part of the reason we wanted to have you as a guest on this podcast, is because we see this as a blind spot for so many team leaders. It's so obvious, but it's so easily overlooked. Why do you think that is, that digital organization is just so easily overlooked even today?
I would say leaders are usually looking ahead. New ideas come to entrepreneurs and leaders really easily, right? So creating something new, or even determining what direction that they want to go in, is really easy for them. It's not so easy for the people following them, but for the leaders, it's like, we just need to get this thing done. So they see the importance, and they're usually the ones who are pretty good at separating through the mess and just getting down to business and making it happen. And so, there are so many different ways to get things done, and you can get it done really quick. If you need someone to be able to start answering emails for a new part of the ministry that you're spinning up, well, let's just create a quick Gmail account, put it on the bulletin and make it happen. Just do it. Well, you don't realize the consequence of not owning that email account. It's not part of your domain at .yourwhatever.com. you don't own those emails. Whatever Google Drive documents they're creating, you don't own that stuff. So I think that's really it, is just, looking ahead and being able to go through and bull and say, we just need to get this done, on to the next thing. Organization feels more like a luxury than a necessity, when really the further you go along, the more clutter you create. And then it becomes really hard to navigate. You fill your house with stuff. It's not a straight shot just to walk through the bathroom. You might stub your toe on things, or have to work your way around, or get really frustrated when you trip and fall over something. So I think that's really it. It's just that laser focus.
Well, and that's why we wanted to approach this topic, is because so many leaders do listen to this broadcast. And it's just we believe this is a good reminder for all you leaders out there that there is a lot to leading that maybe you haven't discovered yet. And one of those areas that requires some attention is organization, making sure your teams are organized. This is a leadership podcast, Shawn, and too often we in the leadership content category, if you will, focus a lot on theory and strategy. But leaders forget that part of leading well is setting up your team for success. And I think that's what we're talking about today. Could you talk specifically to some of the team benefits of integrating digital organization into a leader's ongoing game plan? You've mentioned onboarding, for example.
Yeah. So there's a pretty incredible stat that came out not too long ago that's huge in the HR world right now. But good onboarding accounts for 81% higher retention rates. I mean, let that one sink in. Think about joining someone's team, especially in a position where you're going to be sacrificing a lot. Maybe you're not having the biggest salary, or you're doing this for free. And you walk into a total mess. It's kind of hard to keep going through that. There's a lot of friction. Some people love cleaning that up, in which case, give them some resources from ours to say, take it and run with it and go do something with it. But not everyone is built that way. So reducing the friction means less burnout, way easier to get stuff done. And it creates focus. And so once you realize you can't do it all, you have to focus on a few things. Then when you focus on those few things, you get them done so much faster than you ever thought possible. And you're really gaining traction on your goals, whatever those may be. But there's some other more practical things where we see a lot that there's a gatekeeper to a certain set of files. Maybe it's some financial records, or you've got somebody who's been doing admin stuff for years. They've always been doing it a certain way. They've got all the files on their computer and they don't want to let anyone else touch it. That happens a lot. So we need to help get those files off of this one person's computer, get them into a real system that's built for business. I know it's ministry, but it has to be run like a business. We need to use real tools for this so that the files can be online. They can be accessed by the people who need them, so you can create continuity. Because what happens if a key person leaves? When you start doing digital organization, you start using the right platforms, then you get access to the people who need it. You lock people out who shouldn't have other aspects of it, and you make things a whole lot easier. Steve, you got into the whole passwords thing. We had another church come to us. It was all about continuity. What happens when people leave? A lot of people kind of come and go, and especially in the volunteer space, we had to get all of the passwords into a password management system, and we organized it by vaults or by the roles that people filled. So if it's media, here's all the logins you need for media, and that paired right up with all the media files so that the songs up can go, the videos, and all of those resources are in one place. So it integrates really nicely so that you can bring people on really easily, and when someone leaves, it's not a disaster.
I would just ask our audience just to think about that one point. If they don't get any other takeaway from this episode, I would just think about that one point that Shawn just made about staff transitions. People come and people go. We see it all too often. People go and they had all the knowledge or held all of the passwords in on their computer, in their desk drawer, or in their, day planner. And just that one issue alone, logins and passwords, can create literally chaos for months if it's not in a centralized repository. And so I know that you bring a lot more benefit than that, but that one issue alone, I'll tell you, folks, if you can do one thing, just get those logins and credentials organized tomorrow, and it'll pay dividends for years to come.
But you even think about, it's summertime, or it's the fall, or it's the spring, and we're doing this program and that program, and we're onboarding, 5 volunteers for this, but then they roll off, right? And having everything into these central depositories and using digital methods that are tried and true, once again, makes all of those transitions, I think, as Shawn has so gracefully spoken, less friction and less frustration, and less friction and less frustration, right? Gains a higher retention, where next year when we're looking for volunteers, they're not getting into that mess again. Way too much friction, way too much frustration. And so, man, I could see that for sure. Great insights. As a consultant, in your experience, what would you say the one area where your clients seem to benefit the most from your consulting or your tools or your methods, Shawn?
This may sound a little weird, but it's confidence. So, as leaders, there's always stuff that keeps us up at night. So anxiety is robbing us of our focus and attention. And it's that anxiety that brings up the things that you worry about, the things that you've forgotten at the perfect wrong time, right? So the more balls we're juggling, the more that anxiety rises up, and the more we're in the middle of something, and then our attention gets pulled from one way or another. So having confidence that you go into a meeting, and if you need something, you can pull up that file right away is huge. When you sit down at your computer and see that there are only a few unread emails versus 30,000 unread emails in your inbox, it's a difference. And a lot of people don't realize how much anxiety that's causing them. There's so many people I've had to convince, this is someone that I have a relationship with, and we may be working on something else, and we see their email, and, it's like 30,000 unread emails. I thought, how about we clean that up? And it's like, oh no, it's like, it doesn't bother me. I can find what I need. Like, it's no big deal. And then I, push a little, and we end up cleaning it up. And 2 days later, I get a call. Shawn, you have no idea how much less anxiety I have at the computer. I had no idea how it was affecting me. I mean, that's happened so many times before, but the biggest thing is needing to be able to find something and it's there, and right where to go. There's a confidence thing that in business, and especially when there's a lot going on, it proves itself super valuable over and over again.
Well, especially in the business of church, Rodney and Shawn, churches, if on paper, I sometimes I get some criticism for characterizing churches this way. But if you look at a church on paper and take out the fact that it's a church, it looks like a conference center or an event center. There are so many events, big and small, going on, and so often, and these events are often annual, and they're often dependent on volunteers. And I can't tell you the number of times in my ministry journey how I sat down in an annual planning meeting, and we were kind of starting from scratch, and I would raise my hand and say, can we start with how we did it last year? And, let's start from there. We'll start from there, and if it was a big success, let's do it all again. If it had some hiccups, let's not do some things again. But what did we do last year? And everybody kind of looks at each other and says, well, Susie left about 3 months ago, and she was kind of in charge of that event. And so it's going to be tough. Does anybody remember? And all of a sudden, everybody's just trying to remember. And, but if there's a process document or an event document or a creative brief or whatever you want to call it from that event, then that's where you start. And access to creative briefs is so important in the business of church.
That's, yeah. So we don't just work with churches. We see this events, a lot of things like that, but especially in nonprofits and churches of, oh yeah, that was Susie. She had all this stuff. Who's got the files? That's where that file ownership part really comes into play. If you're dealing with, you've got accounts that end in gmail.com. If you don't know what that password is and the text messages aren't going to your phone for the two-step verification, you're not getting into that account. You're never going to get those files back. So you end up doing that same work over and over again. Whereas let's collect all of this stuff. Let's migrate it all into one place, put all of that event stuff together, and then we can archive that year when it's done, but we can always get right back to it and jump right back in and make the process go by so much faster.
Don't give us any names or anything like that, but maybe an example client, that really impressed you. Like they were in a real mess and you came in and was able to help them execute on your process and your methods, and kind of what set them apart, maybe from other clients, and how they executed on what you were doing. What's that success story look like?
Yeah. So, one of our favorites, his name's Mark, and he was a bottleneck in his company where he had so much email, he was constantly missing things. His team would say, hey, we really need this back from you. What do you think? And he's looking at him, deer in the headlights, because he didn't even see it. There's so much email. And so that's really what it started off with, him coming to us saying, hey, I really need help with email. And he did an amazing job turning this around and really sticking with it, where we took him through a process of cleaning up his email, helping him unsubscribe from things, stop trying to file away certain things, realize what he did need to file away. And the biggest thing that he did was start time chunking as well. So it wasn't just organizing email, because we're not in this just organizing, cleaning up your stuff. It's about a system. Like, how do we think about this differently and operate on a whole other level? That you're doing this really well. So he does this. We clean it up. He's getting less emails, no more bottlenecks, no more things slipping through the cracks, and also going in and chunking out time on his calendar of when he's dealing with certain types of things, so that he doesn't have to keep his email open all day long and constantly hear that ding and, Pavlov's dog, let me go back to email and forget what I'm doing. So that was huge. But then we realized everyone in his company had gmail.com accounts. This is a multi-million-dollar company, and they have their own domain. And so if he was to give out his email address, it was at hisowndomain.com. But all of those emails were funneling through a Gmail account to send and receive. And so he didn't have control of any of the emails that his company was using or any of the files in their Google Drive. And it took us a good bit of time to untangle, but he spent the time working with his team and with me, together to collect these passwords and get things under control. And we copied it all into a real system, into Google Workspace, got him into a filing system, and he made sure to cascade that out to the team and let them know, this is what we're doing. This is how we're doing it from here on out. And he led that charge of, we can help you collect it, figure out how to organize it, but you as the leader have to be the one to say, this is what we're doing going forward. we ended up doing a whole bunch of stuff for him. And it was a really big transformation. I'm so excited for him, and it really put him in a position to be able to sell his business too, which was a cool thing. So kind of giving him options.
Yeah, it sounds like to me that, just that basic organizational strategy, is, from a business perspective or even a ministry perspective, losing those assets is costly. That's like you said, there's no real stewardship in that. And it becomes very, very frustrating. And so I'm assuming what I'm hearing is how that translates to building a really strong team is through that word you mentioned early on, is stewardship. People feel like you're stewarding their time, you're helping them become more efficient. I think great leaders basically are about resourcing people, right? Making sure they have what they need in order to be efficient and effective at their job. And if you don't have that, it's my job to provide that to you. It's my job to resource that to the best of my ability so that you can become a whole lot more efficient. So is that how, the digital organization translates to building strong teams? Is that what you would say, or would you add to that?
I definitely add to it. And there's the part about, gathering your assets together and putting them all in one place and stewarding time for sure. But there's another part of that, stewarding the assets, stewarding the time. But stewarding the time, there's a lot more to it than just getting the passwords in place and the files. It's about keeping track of what you're doing. It's about delegation and how you're delegating. And are you keeping track of that? And that's one of the things that can be the hardest part of working with other people in the organization, is what expectation is set of what I'm supposed to be doing. Am I set up to win? Do I know what the win is and what I'm supposed to be doing, and that I'm doing a good job? And if you keep asking people to do the same thing over and over again, or you've got 3 different people asking you to do something and it's already been done, or you've got conflicting information, or you said, I would love to, but I need more information. Can you tell me this? And then nobody ever replies to you. That's tough. That's the thing that, make me hunt down files, make me reset a password. Okay. But make me feel unsettled of my position here and my value because you're asking me the same thing over and over again, and there's no communication on what's getting done and what the timeline is and the order of importance. That's hard. And so the whole other aspect to this is, once you got your email under control, you're actually responding to people. You got to do that. You get your passwords in order, you get your files in place. Now let's take a look at what we're doing and how are we communicating to others what they should be doing. And project management is a fantastic tool for that, something like Asana or ClickUp, where you can have that transparency of what's getting done and what the priorities are, because there's due dates, they're assigned to people, and it's a place to communicate about that task. Because, in that thing of, 3 different people asking you the same thing, how many different ways do you get asked? In a text message, a phone call, in passing at church, in whatever app that you choose. There's a lot of different communication platforms that we can use in an organization. And so being able to communicate well and consistently, and be able to have everything tracked of what you're actually doing and what the priorities are really huge. And so kind of getting that plan together is super important.
So, Shawn, you have hit on a hot topic of mine that I did not know you were going to bring up, but it makes perfect sense that you did, and that is project management as a way to stay organized. And in case folks didn't catch that, you mentioned two what I would call entry level, which is translated means inexpensive. Project management tools. One was Asana, I believe, and the other one was Clicker. Is that correct? And a lot of people, when they think of project management tools, especially those in ministry, they think, oh, project management applications. Those are multi-million-dollar applications that only big companies like IBM use. No, there are dozens and dozens of entry-level project management tools, and they're there for a reason. Millions of organizations use them for a reason. I'll just say this, and this will show what a hot topic this is with me. I would ask everybody listening out there working in ministry today to please stop managing projects via email. It is so cumbersome. Everybody has so much email. Email strings are cumbersome. And yet I would say, I'm going to go out on a limb and say 8 out of 10 ministries use email and email only to manage projects. And please, look at entry level, basic project management tools that are online. You don't have to download any software. They can get your team so much more organized than a 150 emails flying back and forth.
You're going to save so much time. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
The amount of time you save by not doing email, because it's so hard to keep track, and most people aren't good at managing it. But I'd say if you're going to spend some time anywhere, think about the time you're saving by not spending a ridiculous amount of time in emails, and do some training on how to do project management well.
Amen.
Click up Asana, all these tools. They have fantastic onboarding training to teach you how to use it. And of course, you can hire a consultant too, whether it's my team or someone else. Go get some help and learn how to do project management well, and it will transform your organization.
When Steve and I first started working together and with the rest of the team, I'm like, never send me an email asking me to do something, right? It's like, put it in the room and make it a task so that it hits my task list, right? And another thing about email, if I'm trying to assign something to you via email, I feel like I have to compose an email, right? Where, how are you? Good morning, whatever, right? When we go into our rooms and we're doing that from more of a task perspective, it's more, here's the task that needs to get done. Let me know if you need any, additional assistance. So little things like that really speed things up. Shawn, I know we've talked about a lot of things on the podcast, and we've missed many things I'm sure that you would love to share with our listeners. So as we close, is there any one thing that we should have asked you, Steve or I should have asked you, that we didn't ask you, that you really feel that our audience should hear today, and that would really encourage them as a leader and help them work more efficiently?
I don't know if it's anything that you didn't ask, but the word of encouragement would be, don't beat yourself up over this. It's pretty normal to not have this together, but just because it's normal doesn't mean it's okay to stay here. So there's a lot of tools that you can use, and you're seriously not alone in this. So many people come and they say, I know I'm using this, but I know how to use this part, but I know I should know how to do all of the rest. No, you don't. You really need to know the part that you need to, that you're intending to use it for. So spend some time doing that. And a great thing to do is to start by taking stock of how you're operating and what tools you're using. So how are you communicating? Phone, text, email, various apps, Post-its, whatever. Where are you storing things? Do you have gatekeepers who have got stuff locked down? And once you've kind of taken stock of what you're doing or what you have, let's consolidate it and see, maybe we should stop using some of this and start using something else. Let's create a dedicated spot to put the keys next to the door. And so consolidate it, use stuff less and then you can go in and organize. This is a process. It doesn't happen overnight. It's not supposed to. It's okay if it takes a while. It's about progress, not perfection. So set your sights on where you want to go, that you want to improve this, and start toward it and get some help when you need it.
Yeah, that's great. So tell our listeners where they can find you online, Shawn, and if they wanted to engage with you in some type of consulting project, how would they go about finding you?
Yeah, we are at thedigitalorganizer.com, so pretty easy to find us. If you go to thedigitalorganizer.com/strong teams, I'm going to create a little landing page for you guys where I talk about, taking stock of what you use, give you a little bit of a framework to start gathering your thoughts and writing things down. But yeah, head over to thedigitalorganizer.com. We've got a nice quiz there where you can kind of see how productive you are or how well your organizations are working. Organization systems are working, and that can give you a good starting place of where you should start spending your time next on digital organization. And we've got a contact page there, and I'd love to have a talk with you and see if we can help you.
Oh, that's great. Well, Shawn Lemon has been our guest today. He is the founder of The Digital Organizer. You can find him at thedigitalorganizer.com. If you would like to engage him, Shawn, Steve and I would like to thank you for spending time with us here today and giving your wisdom away to all of our listeners today. Thank you again for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me. It's been a blast.
Well, until we meet again, God bless.